Ever had someone steal from you right under your nose? Not cash, not groceries, but pure electricity. That's exactly what I was up against. Every night, my system acted off, draining power like something was leaching from the line. At first, I figured it was a glitch. Maybe a weak battery cell or even my inverter failing. But what I later uncovered made my blood boil. It wasn't a glitch. It was theft. Someone was plugging their shiny Tesla into my solar grid, draining my backup power, jacking up my costs, and assuming I wouldn't notice. But here's the kicker. It wasn't some random neighbor sneaking around. It was an HOA cop, the same guy who strutted around the block in a knockoff tactical vest, barking fake authority, enforcing rules no one ever voted for. Before we go further, comment which country you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. The sign started small. Lights flickering, battery banks draining too fast, and my bill rising when it should have been dropping. I'd paid for those panels, I wired the system, and I knew every amp that was supposed to move. So when the math didn't add up, I got suspicious. I decided to keep watch. One night, I cracked the blinds, coffee in hand, waiting. Hours crawled by. Then, after midnight, a shadow slipped across my driveway. And there he was, the HOA cop himself. Not in a patrol car, not with paperwork, but with a fat orange Tesla charging cable dragging behind him. He walked straight to my outlet like he owned it, plugged in and leaned back against his luxury car while my power flowed into his battery. That's when I knew it wasn't just laziness. This was a man abusing fake authority, treating me like his personal gas station, and I wasn't letting it slide. The next morning, I confronted him in broad daylight. He strutted down the street in that vest labeled HOA Cop, like it gave him a badge. I stepped right up and said, "Hey, I saw you charging your Tesla off my grid last night. You're stealing power." He didn't blink. He smirked, lifted his sunglasses, and said, "Neighborhood ordinance allows for emergency charging. I'm authorized to draw from community resources." I almost laughed in his face. Community resources? My solar array wasn't public. I paid for every inch of it. And there sure as hell wasn't a law that let some self-appointed HOA cop siphon my electricity. But he didn't stop. Night after night, I caught him sneaking back. Sometimes he parked his Tesla far down the driveway, thinking I wouldn't notice. Other times he stood bold, chest puffed out, daring me to speak. He was draining kilowatts, and every morning my system showed the loss. That's when I decided to act. No more arguing, no more warnings. It was time to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. If you're enjoying this HOA nightmare so far, hit like and subscribe. The story only gets better. I started by calling the county energy office. They confirmed exactly what I suspected. Under property and utility law, no one can legally hook into my system without permission. In fact, it counts as theft of services, just like siphoning gas or pirating cable. That gave me the green light. So I dug into my equipment. My inverter system allowed voltage adjustments, something most homeowners never touch. Normally it's set for safe, steady output, but I could tweak it just enough that anyone connecting without the right grounding would get a surge. Not deadly, not illegal, just enough to fry electronics. I set up a hidden camera facing the outlet, then waited. Sure enough, the next night headlights rolled across my yard. The Tesla eased up, silent. He stepped out, plugged in like it was his right, and leaned back on the hood while my power flowed. But this time, he was in for a shock. I sat on my porch in the dark, coffee in hand, watching. At first, everything looked normal. The charging light blinked steady. The screen glowed blue. Then my system kicked in. A faint hum built up. Within seconds, sparks shot from the Tesla's charging port. The blue glow snapped to red. He frowned, bent down, then pop! A flash of white light burst out, followed by a crackle. His car alarm blared across the neighborhood. "What the?" he shouted, stumbling back. "Couldn't help it," I laughed, loud enough for him to hear. He spun on me, face twisted. "You rigged this!" I stood, calm as stone. "No, I protected my property. You've been stealing power for weeks. Now you're paying the price." He stomped toward me, fists clenched. "I'll have you arrested. You can't sabotage an HOA officer." That line almost made me laugh. I pulled out my phone. "First, you're not an officer. Second, you just admitted to utility theft on camera." I tilted the phone, red recording light shining. His face went pale. But instead of backing down, he called Karen, the HOA president. Within minutes, she pulled up in her SUV, storming out like she owned the block. "This is harassment," she shrieked. "You can't tamper with a member's car. He was conducting official HOA business." "Official business?" I asked. plugging into my private solar grid? Karen crossed her arms, smug. The HOA has rights to community resources. That includes your property if deemed necessary. That was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. I almost pitied them. Almost. I pulled out my second phone, the one I'd used to call the sheriff when the Tesla alarm first went off. Right on cue, squad cars rolled in, lights flashing red and blue. Deputies stepped out, hands on their belts. We got reports of theft of services and trespassing. Who's the homeowner? I raised my hand. That's me. The HOA cop pointed instantly. He sabotaged my car. Arrest him, Karen screeched. Yes, arrest him now. But the deputies weren't buying it. I showed them the footage. Clear video of him plugging in, draining power, then sparking out. The deputies nodded. Looks like theft of utilities, one said. And trespassing since he entered without consent. Karen tried to argue, but the deputy shut her down. Ma'am, HOA rules don't override state law or property rights. By the end, the HOA cop was cited for theft of services and trespassing. Karen was slapped with obstruction charges. They were both hauled away, while the dead Tesla sat silent in my driveway. But the real payoff came later. I sued the HOA cop for theft of services, calculating every kilowatt. The court awarded me over $50,000 in damages, more than enough to replace my system twice. Karen, humiliated, was voted off the board and forced to sell her house at a loss. The HOA itself was investigated, stripped of its charter, and dissolved. As for me, my solar grid was mine again, and peace returned to the neighborhood. I took one last sip of coffee, watching the patrol lights fade, and thought, this is what happens when HOA bullies forget who really owns the power. So what do you think? Did that HOA cop get what he deserved, or was I too harsh dragging the entire HOA down with him? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand.